You. Sorry, we don't need to concern ourselves about that matter. Why were no autopsies done? You can't have a proper inquest without autopsies to find out exactly what killed them. One reason why they would not want an autopsy is because it would disclose what type of explosives were used, and prove the government's elaborate homemade explosives and 18 Alexandra Grove bomb factory story to be a total fabrication and a massive lie. The body count reveals no bombers. The first official body count on 2 of the trains was 1 body short. At the 7/7 sham inquest in November 2010, Dr. Morgan Costello gave evidence that he was asked to attend 2 scenes, Edgware Road and Aldgate, for the purposes of certifying the extinction of life. He counted 6 bodies at Edgware Road and 7 bodies at Aldgate, and declared these as life extinct. The enormous anomaly that passed completely unreported in the press was that the numbers should have been 7 and 8 if we count the bodies of the bombers. Aren't these 2 body counts extraordinarily powerful proof that there were no suicide bombers on the Aldgate and Edgware Road tube trains? We were told by very reliable sources that the bombs were military high-grade explosives detonated by timing devices, not by suicide bombers, and survivor Bruce Late says that Shazad Tanweer did not blow up Aldgate Tube. Note that the man next to Tanweer, coloured green and given the number 8 in the drawing, was not killed. If Tanweer was blown into 52 pieces, how could this man next to him still be alive? Evidence presented to the sham inquest claimed that Tanweer and Khan were blown into a large number of different pieces by their bombs. But how would this be consistent with the fact that almost all of the other serious injuries in those coaches were lower limb injuries, the feet and legs, indicating that the bomb was at floor level, not on someone's back? Also, it has been reported that Shazad Tanweer's body and head were blown into so many small pieces that he was unidentifiable, and that's why he did not show up as part of the body count. The inquest stated that Tanweer was blown into 52 small pieces. However, a couple of 7/7 investigators spent some days in the Beeston area of South Leeds in 2006 and were able to speak to members of the families and those who knew them. 2 friends of the Tanweer family related the astonishment which the latter experienced upon being given back the body of Tanweer and finding it relatively intact. Remember that Bruce Late said that Shazad Tanweer was not on that train.
Now then, Nick, on the last show we mentioned that the families are rumoured to have identified bodies of the alleged bombers, and they were intact, even though we were told they were in pieces.
Yeah, this is especially so for the Tanweer family.
Shazid Tanweer.
Shazid Tanweer in Beeston, buried in Pakistan, yeah.
All right. So, and I mean, have we got testimony from his family saying that his body was intact?
Afraid not, no. But there's a couple of quite reliable truth investigators who spent a week in Leeds, and they got testimony from friends of the family saying that. And it's on the Official Confusion website, and that is a fairly reliable source.
All right.
I mean, we would really like to be able to meet the families and talk to them and ask them these questions, as you know, Richard.
Yes.
And it is, unfortunately, very difficult to get to speak to virtually any of the key people in the story.
Right.
9th chapter title, Epilogue. Hopefully, among the security services, there must be at least some decent, honest people who know that the official story is a pack of lies and are troubled by it. Unfortunately, they are all keeping quiet about it. We need them to have the courage to come forward and say what they know and arrest their evil colleagues and bring them to justice if they don't want to be also condemned as accomplices of the government and media criminals who committed treason and mass murder that day and helped to cover it up, enabling the Orwellian Big Brother police state plans for Britain to pick up steam, and the real perpetrators, the New World Order government terrorists, to plunge the world into World War III and Armageddon. Tony Farrell, who was South Yorkshire Police's principal intelligence analyst for 12 years and a devout Christian, was troubled by the lies and was the first insider to bravely stand up for the truth. A sergeant with the London Anti-Terrorist Branch, who is also a Christian, has now started to sue the Metropolitan Police over the murder of John Charles de Menezes. So we have another brave Christian soul willing to stand up for the truth. What's wrong with the rest of you insiders, you spineless cowards? And where are the millions of Muslims in all of this? Why do Christians have to stand up for the Muslims and suffer losing their jobs and livelihoods? Why aren't Muslims getting involved en masse and helping us to clear these young Muslim men's names and thereby exonerate their religion? Tony Farrell had worked for South Yorkshire Police, the 13th largest of the 44 police forces in the UK, for 17 years and had been employed for 12 years as their principal intelligence analyst. His job involved producing a yearly strategic threat assessment matrix to determine how the police force had to prioritise its activities. He said that after analysing 9/11 and 7/7 and watching my 7/7 ripple effect video, the biggest threat was from the government, for which he was naturally sacked, because of the cowardly institutionalised denial of the truth by South Yorkshire Police. He was not willing to be an accomplice after the fact to these horrendous crimes and mass murder. Those who are keeping quiet are accomplices to mass murder and are also committing misprision of treason, which carries a maximum life sentence. South Yorkshire Police sacked their long-standing, most senior principal intelligence analyst, Tony Farrell, rather than investigate what he had stated in his analysis. Meredith Hughes, who was the Chief Constable of South Yorkshire Police, absolutely refused to investigate Tony Farrell's analysis that supports the contents of my original 7/7 ripple effect film. Meredith Hughes was in charge of the policing of the G8 meeting in Gleneagles on the 7th of July 2005, and Tony Farrell's boss, DCI Steve Williams, told Tony on the 7th of July 2010 that he was in London on the 7th of July 2005 as part of the terrorist training exercise and knew exactly who had carried it out, thus destroying Peter Power's modified story that it was only a desktop exercise in one room involving himself and 5 executives of Reed Elsevier, whereas his original story was that it involved over 1,000 people. Were Chief Constable Meredith Hughes and Detective Chief Inspector Steve Williams of South Yorkshire Police involved in the planning of the bombings on the 7th of July 2005, and was that why they sacked Tony Farrell, rather than investigate his analysis to cover up their part in it? They can't sack everyone. Come on, stand up and be counted. Do the job you are paid to do, like brave Tony Farrell did. He was sacked for doing his job properly and refusing to tell and peddle the government's lies. Where is your backbone? Or are you spineless cowards and have a yellow streak instead of a backbone? One day you will meet your maker and have absolutely no excuse for your inaction. Wake up from the conditioning and mind control programming you have been subjected to, and the cognitive dissonance and institutionalized denial you are suffering from. The sleeper must awaken. The sleeper must awaken. Why do you think they have made a Big Brother TV program? To program people's minds and get them used to the idea of living under constant surveillance, and to like it, and volunteer to take part in it. Why do you think they are called programs? It is because they are used for mind control, brainwashing, programming of the public's minds into obeying and sleepwalking whilst following their New World Order hidden agenda. The sleeper must awaken. The sleeper must awaken. The television is the greatest mind control and propaganda weapon ever invented. Do you think you should be paying for a TV license to fund all their programming of your mind and the lies and propaganda they are broadcasting to deceive, brainwash, control and enslave everyone, including you? Does the TV and watching it not already control most of your life and the way you think?
Woe is us! We're in a lot of trouble! Because you people and 62 million other Americans are listening to me right now. Because less than 3% of you people read books. Because the only truth you know is what you get over this tube. Right now, there is an entire generation that never knew anything that didn't come out of this tube. This tube is the gospel, the ultimate revelation. This tube can make or break presidents, popes, prime ministers. This tube is the most awesome goddamn force in the whole godless world. And woe is us. This company is now in the hands of the Illusion Corporation of America. There's a new chairman of the board, and when the 12th largest company in the world controls the most awesome goddamn propaganda force in the whole godless world, who knows what shit will be peddled for truth on this network. So you listen to me. Listen to me. Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. So if you want the truth, go to God. Go to yourselves. Because that's the only place you're ever going to find any real truth. But man, you're never going to get any truth from us. We'll tell you anything you want to hear. We lie like hell. We'll tell you any shit you want to hear. We deal in illusions, man. None of it is true. But you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds. We're all you know. You're beginning to believe the illusions here. You're beginning to think that the tube is reality and that your own lives are unreal. You do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like the tube. You eat like the tube. You raise your children like the tube. You even think like the tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off!
Do you think you should be paying for all those CCTV cameras and their operatives to spy on you everywhere you go, so they can enslave you and fine you, thereby stealing your money for doing nothing wrong? Especially when they use your own money from those fines and taxes to pay for even more CCTV cameras, so you have even less privacy and freedom. And then they claim that the cameras do not work when there is a real crime being committed by the people who control the cameras. Don't you realize that in paying fines and taxes, you are actually paying for the chains they are using to enslave you with? Wake up, look and see the reality that you are actually paying for them to turn you into their slave. The government is continually and illegally passing new legislation to restrict your freedom and obtain more and more information about you to control you, and yet they themselves are becoming more and more secretive and out of control. They have turned the relationship between the people and government into the opposite of what it should be. It should be public servants serving the people, not the people serving public government masters or, more accurately, dictators. Please, for your own sakes, obtain copies of this film for everyone you know and for the media outlets in your area, to wake them up and let everyone know the truth, so that the public will give the decent, honest people in the security services, like Tony Farrell, their support and encouragement to tell the truth and arrest their evil colleagues. Addendum. I was arrested and extradited to the UK on a false, malicious and politically motivated, trumped-up charge that had no chance of succeeding, but was designed to punish me for having made 7/7 ripple effect and exposing the truth for the whole world to see. Their objective was to shut me up, literally, and make an example of me to deter others from speaking the truth. During my trial, in all the local newspapers throughout the British Isles, they quoted that I had told John Hyman that his daughter Miriam was not on the number 30 bus. Here is proof that she wasn't on that bus. The parents of Miriam Hyman, 32, a freelance picture researcher from East Finchley, North London, don't know what else they can do. They last spoke to her around 9:30 a.m. on Thursday when she was outside King's Cross. She had been trying to get to work at Canary Wharf. "We've had no news," said her father, John, who is retired. She certainly wasn't injured on the Underground, because I spoke to her, and at that time she was with a crowd of people evacuated from trains on the pavement outside King's Cross Station. The only other possibility, apart from a road accident, is if she was on the bus that was blown up. The reason we think that is unlikely is because it wouldn't make sense for her to take that route. And I was speaking to her about that time, and her office phoned her at about 10 a.m., which was about 10 minutes after the explosion, to say, "Don't come in." And from another article in the Something Jewish paper, Miriam Hyman, 32, called her father from outside King's Cross Station at 9:45 a.m. on Thursday morning and said she was fine, but her family has not heard from her since. She called her dad at 9:45 from King's Cross Station, and the number 30 bus blew up in Tavistock Square at precisely 9:47, only 2 minutes later. It takes 10 minutes to walk from King's Cross to Euston, and it is therefore impossible for her to have been on that bus and been killed on it, and then her office to speak to her at 10 a.m. to tell her not to come into work at Canary Wharf, the place where 3 alleged suicide bombers were shot and killed that morning, just like John Charles de Menezes was 2 weeks later. Her dad, John Hyman, confirmed to us that his daughter Miriam phoned him at 9:45 from King's Cross. Did she ignore her officer's instructions not to come into work at Canary Wharf and meet the alleged suicide bombers on the way, and was killed along with them? Then her parents told that she died on the number 30 bus? Or, as some people believe, Miriam is still alive?
Some new evidence has recently come to light. I was contacted a few weeks ago by a man whose friend was at a Thameslink line station on the morning of 7/7. He was of Muslim appearance and waiting on the platform at Gatwick Station. At 10 a.m. he was singled out by 10 armed police bearing large MP5 submachine guns, wearing black bulletproof vests and white shirts. They were pointing their guns straight at him, and he feels quite lucky to still be alive. he has documentary evidence to prove he was apprehended at this location and at that time. Now, let's just assume that the alleged bombers who were stranded at King's Cross, not knowing what to do after real bombs had gone off, headed back to the Thameslink platform from which they had got off earlier. This isn't unreasonable. Remember, they had very little knowledge of London, and it is more likely they would flee to a known route, perhaps retracing their tracks. If they went back to the same platform and jumped on the first train, this would be a Thameslink line train heading south. Such a train would go to Gatwick and could explain why the man was mistakenly apprehended at gunpoint at the Thameslink Gatwick platform at 10 a.m. The authorities could have easily tracked the men to the Thameslink train using either CCTV or mobile phone positions. Looking at the Thameslink route map, they perhaps thought Gatwick might be a likely destination for the fleeing Patsies. But if the Patsies changed trains at London Bridge to get on the Jubilee line, where does this go? You guessed it, Canary Wharf, where they were shot at around 10:30 a.m. The time of 10 a.m. at Gatwick ties in with the bombers fleeing south on the Thameslink line at about 9:10 a.m., which is 20 minutes after the bombs went off. If they left King's Cross at 9:10 a.m. on a Thameslink train, that would get them to London Bridge by 9:35. Allowing 15 minutes at London Bridge station, they would have arrived at Canary Wharf at about 10 a.m. This gets them to Canary Wharf in time to be shot, as reported in various newspapers, at 10:30 a.m. It really is an utter disgrace that myself, Nick Colostrom and others have to do the job of the police and the media because they haven't investigated this case correctly. But hey, they are controlled by the strings of power which prevent them from doing this. What utter spineless wastes of space they really are.
I and other very serious truth seekers have been repeatedly verbally attacked for our work in exposing the truth about 7/7 by people who, strangely enough, claim to want the same thing we do, but go around vociferously attacking us everywhere they can for no good reason. They are acting like gatekeepers to try to prevent us from succeeding in opening the floodgates and shining the light of truth on the real perpetrators of 7/7. Lenin said that the best way to control the opposition is by leading it, and that role of gatekeeper is played very well by Rachel North and Bridget Dunn and other members of J7, who have consistently gone out of their way everywhere they can, as often as they can, to attack other truth seekers, including myself, to try to undermine us and thereby prevent us from succeeding in bringing the real perpetrators to justice. The best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. One can understand the scurrilous beneath contempt BBC attacking us, because, after all, they are the government's official propaganda and disinformation agency. And they, in fact, did attack and try to discredit me and others with their Conspiracy Files 7/7 hit piece. However, they only shot themselves in the foot, both feet really, because, as a result, more people watched my film and saw that it is far more credible than the BBC's hit piece. Professor Ridley Duff did a very scholarly comparison between my film and the BBC's and came to the same conclusion. Tony Farrell, who was South Yorkshire Police's principal intelligence analyst for 12 years, also agreed with me, for which he was naturally sacked because of cowardly institutionalized denial and cognitive dissonance. Because I refused to play ball with the BBC and recount on what I had said in my film, the government decided to hit me with the bat, the bar actually, and I was maliciously charged, arrested and extradited to the UK on a false, malicious and politically motivated charge of doing an act tending and intended to pervert the course of public justice. The investigation, called Operation Favila, the forensics, the extradition, my incarceration and trial, must have wasted hundreds of thousands of pounds of your taxes. They don't care how much money they waste, because it is your money they are wasting, not their own. They make a fortune and all profit from wasting your money, because the courts and police are registered companies trading for profit at your expense. That is an obvious conflict of interest that they hide from the public, to whom they sell justice, contrary to their own Magna Carta of 1215 AD, Article 40. Article 40. To no one will we sell, to no one will we refuse or delay right or justice. They have turned justice into a very lucrative business that only the rich can afford. Justice has to be free, or there is no justice. If it costs even 1 penny, there is always someone who doesn't have a penny and thus is denied justice. As Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If you see, read or hear of injustice, you must react immediately as though it was being done to you personally, and do everything you possibly can to correct the injustice that is being done. You owe that to Christ, who taught you, "Whatsoever you do to any man, you do it to me," and the second great commandment, "Thou shalt love thy neighbour as thyself." He also commanded you to love one another as he loves you, and he was willing to give his life for you. What are you willing to do? The reality is that what I did was perfectly lawful and called an amicus curiae brief, whereby anyone who is not a party to a trial, but has information or evidence that they consider relevant to the trial, can send it to the court. That's perfectly lawful and is what I did. It was also the perfect opportunity for me to officially bring the evidence I had to the attention of the judiciary, in the hope that they would order an investigation into who really carried out the bombings. So I sent copies of my film to the court, where the government was desperately trying to frame 3 friends of the 4 alleged bombers. The judge misdirected the jury during jury selection, saying, "As you know, Mohammed Siddiqui Khan, Shehzad Tanweer, Jermaine Lindsay and Hasib Hussain were responsible for causing a series of explosions on the London Underground and public transport system on July 7, 2005 that killed 52 people and injured hundreds of others." Then, on the first day of their 3 friends' trial, the prosecutor lied to the jury, telling them that there was no doubt or dispute that Mohammed Siddiqui Khan, Shehzad Tanweer, Jermaine Lindsay and Hasib Hussain carried out the attacks of 7/7. You will, I'm sure, immediately recognise the names Mohammed Siddiqui Khan, Shehzad Tanweer, Jermaine Lindsay and Hasib Hussain. They are, of course, the men who, on the 7th of July 2005, detonated 4 bombs on the London transport network, killing not only themselves, together with 52 innocent civilians, but also injuring many hundreds of others who were unfortunate enough to be caught within the range of their bombs. During their retrial, it was reported that Neil Flewitt QC told a jury at Kingston Crown Court that there was no dispute that Khan, Tanweer, Lindsay and Hussain were responsible for the appalling act of terrorism on July the 7th, 2005. It was not me, but them who were guilty of trying to pervert the course of justice by misleading and lying to the jury and keeping the truth from them, because they were desperate to convict these 3 young men, so that they could then use their propaganda mainstream media organs to tell the public that they were guilty, and so, by extension, so were the 4 alleged bombers, and that my film was wrong. They failed miserably in their despicable efforts. The 3 were found unanimously not guilty, and my film stands as being the truth. In fact, having the evidence that I had, if I had not sent it to the court, I would have been guilty of withholding evidence and misprision of treason. The judge and prosecutor should both be charged with attempting to pervert the course of justice and perjury for lying to the jury. The 3 friends of the 4 alleged bombers spent 2 years in prison for something they could not possibly have done, because it is impossible for 3 men to be guilty of helping 4 other men do something that those 4 other men did not do. If the government had managed to convict them, they could have got 20 to 30 years or more in prison for something they could not possibly have done. With all the evidence I had, I absolutely could not sit back and allow that to happen. During my 157 days of false imprisonment, most of it in Wandsworth Prison, the authorities were supposed to take me to court on 5 scheduled occasions for me to apply for bail, but they didn't do so. The first time, their excuse was that they couldn't find me in their prison, which is ludicrous, because every cell has the prisoner's name and number on the outside of the door, and it's all registered on their computers. However, at 8 o'clock the very next morning, the cell door opened and they managed to find me to take me for what they claimed was a random drugs test. They could find me for a non-mandatory drugs test, but not take me to a scheduled court hearing that they were mandated to do. Fishy? It gets worse, because they didn't take me when scheduled 4 more times, until a nice judge got angry and ordered them to bring me the very next morning. The next morning they finally brought me to court for my bail hearing, and the judge granted me bail. But it was 3 days after the sham inquest had finished. So they succeeded in their evil plot of keeping me and the truth out of their sham inquest. They were absolutely terrified that I might be able to meet survivors and families of the deceased and give them copies of 7/7 Ripple Effect and tell them the truth about what really happened